Ladies and gentlemen, let's Red Gaming Tentacom video. The Last of Us Remastered is going to be running at 60 frames per second, at least according to several tweets that have been released from key members of the Naughty Dog team. For example, Kurt Margenau stated on Twitter, played some hashtag TLOU at 60 FPS tonight for the first time, 60 FPS cutscenes and all, transformative, I'm a believer. I don't think I can go back. Meanwhile, the co-director Bruce Starley chimed in and said, had a dream in 60 FPS last night, and then added hashtag TLOU Remastered. Meanwhile, Neil Druckmann added to this and said, what if I told you this was no dream? Hashtag believe. So basically, there's a couple of things we can take away from this. First of all, it's most likely that, well, The Last of Us Remastered is going to be at 60 FPS. We knew they were targeting this. Now, of course, as a slight aside, targeted and does run at 60 FPS are completely different things to remains at 60 FPS, particularly when it starts to get really busy. We know that the PS3 version of The Last of Us, particularly in certain sections, basically chugged, to say the least. It was pretty much like an asthmatic slug that was trying to crawl its way up a river of salt. It just wasn't good at certain points. You could just physically feel the PS3 rendering each frame. You could just... It was quite painful at points. I think there was an update which did help it a little bit, but there were a couple of points where you could just feel that the game definitely was struggling. So that does of course mean that we will be doing frame rate tests just to see how that handles, because obviously it's not just issues of, okay, well, the frame rate's dropping, does it improve say the responsiveness of the controls, which it should theoretically do, and what about visual tearing and stuff if the frame rate does start dipping. So we'll do analysis on that, as well as of course comparisons versus the PS3 version and all the other bits and bobs you would expect. But I feel the bigger issue here is that the tweets, specifically, or particularly rather, Kurt's, where he mentioned that I'm a believer, don't think I can go back. Isn't this what us gamers have been saying for a long time? Allow me to give you an example. We have a video on the channel that's currently featured, and if you've not checked it out yet, I suggest you do so if you're a bit curious about this whole situation. But we've got a video named Frame Rate Demonstration 60 FPS versus 30 FPS. You could probably just search for Frame Rate Demonstration on the channel. It is currently featured, but if you happen to watch this in this far-flung future zone where it's not featured any longer, you could, search for it. And it basically shows the difference, if you slow down the game, of the fluidity between 60 and 30 FPS. Now, one could argue that a title along the lines of, say, Trine, well, let's say Trine 2, or Limbo, I personally am going to use Trine, because it's a very visually pleasing game. It has just been ported to the PS4, which is obviously a great point of comparison, and it does run at 1080p 60. But if you were to look at that game, arguably speaking, it's going to age a lot better than something along the lines of Gears of War. It's probably going to age better than even a pretty nice looking game now, say The Last of Us, and that's simply because of the visual styling of the game, the fluidity, the animation, the aesthetic, the art stylings, all of that comes together to make, I wouldn't exactly say a timeless classic, but it's going to age a lot better. I don't think this is a shock to any gamer though. I mean, I think we've all been saying for a long time that 60 FPS is really the way forward, and this is why I was so damn critical, despite the fact that it's a pretty looking game for the time, the Order 1886, the fact that they were basically trying to pass off of the frame rate as a choice and saying, well, it makes it a more cinematic experience and all of this rubbish. In my personal opinion, I just think it's absolutely ludicrous as statements. It's clear, objectively, that 60 frames per second is a better experience, and obviously, if they're doing a remastering, for example, The Last of Us in this case, it is coming from a previous generation, so they do have that extra wiggle room in terms of raw performance to be able to simply make the game run like that. They are having to do quite a bit of work behind the scenes. It has been, for example, commented that a lot of the optimizations that were running on the SPUs of the PS3 cell processor, they're basically having to convert a lot of that to either run on the CPU in terms of multi-threading of the PS4, or they're actually having to put these as GPU commands. But objectively speaking, it is an experience, and as he points out here, as Kurt points out, he doesn't think he can go back to 30 FPS after trying it out in 60. And that's kind of the thing. Anyway, guys, yes, we're tackling the old frame rate chestnut again because, frankly speaking, the corpse needs to be kept alive for a bit longer. Anyway, see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.